In the year 385 AD, a monk named Evagrius Ponticus was expelled from the institutional church for writing something they couldn't allow in circulation. He described 8 patterns of thought that trap human souls in suffering. The church later sanitized his list into the 7 deadly sins and turned them into moral failures you confess to priests. But that's not what Evagrius wrote. He wrote that these patterns aren't sins. They're feeding mechanisms. And the beings feeding through them aren't demons in the way the church teaches. They're farmers. And what they're farming is called lush. The Gnostic texts that survived suppression use different language, but they describe the same system. The archons don't just attack you randomly. They've built an agricultural infrastructure. Your addiction, whatever it is, isn't a personal failure or a disease that needs treatment. It's a crop rotation. You're the field. The substance or behavior you can't stop is the irrigation. And the emotional cycle you go through every time you use and crash and crave again, that's the harvest. You're not consuming the addiction. The addiction is consuming you. And every time you feed it, you're generating lush, emotional frequency in the exact range the archons need to survive. Here's what makes this different from every recovery program you've ever encountered. They tell you you're sick and you need to get better. Jesus told his chosen ones you're not sick. You're being farmed. And you can't heal your way out of a farm. You have to recognize the structure, see who built it, and walk out while they're still expecting you to produce. Not through willpower. Not through 12 steps. Through understanding what's actually happening and making one decision that collapses the entire system. Tonight, you're learning how the Archon Lush farm operates at the level most people never see, why your addiction is more valuable to them than you realize, and the technique Jesus taught that doesn't fight the craving, it severs the entity amplifying it. If you're walking out of the Lush farm tonight, comment, "I see the harvest right now." Before you can escape, you need to understand what they're farming from you. The word lush isn't ancient, but the concept is. The Gnostics called it pneuma when it's pure and epithymia when it's corrupted. Robert Monroe, who researched out-of-body states in the 1970s, called it lush because that's what he heard entities harvesting from humans call it. But what it actually is strips away all the mysticism. Lush is emotional energy that generates measurable electromagnetic frequency. And the archons feed on frequencies produced by specific emotional states, primarily craving, disappointment, shame, and despair. Your addiction generates all 4 in sequence, which is why it's the most efficient lush production system ever engineered. You crave. That craving produces frequency 1. You use. The high produces brief relief but no real satisfaction, which generates frequency 2, disappointment masked as pleasure. You crash. The shame and self-hatred produce frequency 3. And underneath all of it runs frequency 4, the despair that maybe you'll never be free, maybe this is just who you are, maybe you're too broken to fix. 4 distinct frequencies. 1 cycle. And you repeat it daily, sometimes hourly, generating harvestable energy every single time. Here's what most people miss. The substance or behavior isn't what they want. The emotional cycle is what they want. That's why addiction doesn't make sense from a material perspective. If you were just seeking pleasure, you'd stop after the high. But you don't stop. You keep going even when it stops feeling good, even when it starts destroying your life, even when you hate yourself for doing it. Because you're not in control of the cycle anymore. Something else is maintaining it. Something that needs you to keep producing those 4 frequencies no matter what it costs you personally. Chosen ones who understand lush stop asking, "Why can't I just stop?" and start asking, "Who benefits from me not stopping?" Because the answer isn't you. You're suffering. Your life is falling apart. Your relationships are damaged. Your health is compromised. But someone is benefiting. Someone is feeding. And that someone has been working very hard to make sure you never recognize that the cycle isn't yours. It's theirs. And they built it with your nervous system as the infrastructure. The Archon Lush farm runs on a 3-part system. And your addiction is what happens when all 3 parts lock into place and start operating together. First, there's the wound. Every human in material density carries wounds. Moments where something essential was taken or never given. Love, safety, belonging, meaning. Those wounds create voids. Empty spaces in your psyche where something should be but isn't. And voids generate a specific frequency, longing. The ache of incompleteness. That's frequency 0. The baseline the archons need before they can build the rest of the system. Second, there's the numbing agent. The substance or behavior that temporarily fills the void or makes you forget it exists. It doesn't matter what your specific addiction is: alcohol, drugs, food, sex, work, shopping, scrolling, gaming. What matters is that it works. The first time you used it, it gave you relief. It made the ache stop. It made you feel whole or numb or powerful or connected or whatever your specific void was screaming for. And your nervous system, desperate for relief, learned immediately. This is the solution. Void aches use substance, pain stops. That circuit formed in one moment. And once it's formed, your brain will return to it automatically every time the void opens. But here's where the archons enter. The numbing agent doesn't heal the void. It just covers it temporarily. And the moment the effect wears off, the void is still there. Often worse than before, because now you have shame and physical consequences layered on top of the original wound. So the craving returns. But it doesn't return at the same intensity it left. It returns stronger. And that amplification, that's not your biology. That's the third part of the system. The archon that's positioned itself at the moment between "I want relief" and "I'm taking action to get it." It takes your natural desire for the numbing agent and amplifies it into compulsion. What should be a manageable urge becomes overwhelming desperation. What should be a choice becomes something that feels inevitable. The farm operates like this: void aches. Craving begins. Archon amplifies craving into compulsion. You use. Brief relief. Void still there. Shame added. Craving returns amplified. Archon strengthens. Cycle repeats. And every single stage generates lush. The ache generates longing frequency. The amplified craving generates desperation frequency. The brief high generates disappointment frequency. The crash generates shame frequency. And underneath it all, the growing certainty that you'll never escape generates despair frequency. 5 frequencies. 1 cycle. Repeating daily. You're not addicted to the substance. You're the crop in a system designed to extract maximum emotional energy from minimum input. Chosen ones who see this structure stop fighting the addiction as if it's a personal battle and start recognizing it as agriculture. You're not failing at recovery. You're succeeding at production. And the moment you understand that the system wasn't built by you and isn't maintained by you, you can stop participating in it. Not by resisting the craving. By severing the entity that amplifies it. Jesus didn't teach chosen ones to overcome addiction through willpower or group meetings or substituting one behavior for another. He taught a technique that dismantles the farm by removing the archon maintaining it. This isn't recovery. Recovery implies you're sick. This is recognition. You're seeing the system clearly and withdrawing your participation. It happens in 3 movements. Not steps. Movements. Because they flow into each other naturally once you begin. The first movement is locating the void. Not intellectually knowing what hurt you. Physically feeling where the wound lives in your body. Most people spend years in therapy talking about their trauma without ever actually feeling it. Because feeling it is what the addiction exists to prevent. But you can't heal what you won't feel. And you can't escape the farm while you're still avoiding the void it was built around. Here's how it happens. The next time your craving hits, and it will, probably within hours of watching this, you don't act on it immediately. You also don't resist it or try to push it away. You pause. You sit. And you ask yourself not, what do I want? But what am I trying not to feel? And then you drop your attention into your body. Most people live entirely in their heads. But the void doesn't live in your thoughts. It lives in your chest, your stomach, your throat. Somewhere in your body, there's a physical sensation of emptiness or ache or pressure. That's where the wound is. That's what your addiction has been covering. Once you feel it, you stay with it. Not for hours. For 60 seconds. Just 1 minute of letting the void exist without immediately numbing it. And what you'll notice, what every chosen one who does this notices, is that the sensation is intense but it's not unbearable. You've been running from it your entire life, convinced that if you ever let yourself fully feel it, it would destroy you. But it doesn't destroy you. Just hurts. And pain you're willing to feel completes. Pain you avoid compounds. In that 60 seconds of staying present with the void, something shifts. The craving doesn't disappear. But it loses its emergency quality. It stops feeling like if you don't use right now, you'll die. Because you just proved to yourself that you can feel the thing you've been avoiding and survive it. The second movement flows directly from the first. Once you're feeling the void instead of running from it, you'll notice something else present. The amplification. The voice in your head that's saying, you need this, you can't handle this without it, just this once won't hurt, you deserve relief, everyone else gets to escape, why shouldn't you? That voice isn't you. It's not your thoughts. It's the archon that's been maintaining the compulsion. And the moment you recognize it as separate from you, you can address it. You speak. Out loud if possible. Silently if you must. But you name what's happening. I feel you. I know you're here. I know you've been amplifying this craving to keep me producing. But I'm not producing anymore. This void is mine. This pain is mine. And I'm not numbing it to feed you. You don't yell. You don't command with false authority. You just state the truth. You've seen the system. You know what it is. And you're withdrawing consent. What happens next is what confirms this isn't psychology. The craving will shift. Not slowly over days of practice. Immediately. Within seconds of speaking those words, you'll feel the intensity drop. Sometimes it drops to almost nothing. Sometimes it reduces by half. But it always reduces. Because what you just did is sever the amplification. The natural craving that comes from having a wound and wanting relief, that's still there. That's human. But the compulsion that makes it feel like you'll die if you don't use right now, that's archonic. And you just cut the connection. The third movement is what keeps you out of the farm permanently. Because severing the archon once doesn't mean it won't try to reattach tomorrow. Archons don't give up easily when they lose a productive harvest source. They'll test whether the connection is truly severed or just temporarily weakened. Usually within 24 hours, you'll face a situation specifically designed to make you fall back into the pattern. Someone will trigger you. Something will go wrong. The wound will ache worse than it has in weeks. And the craving will return hard. That's the test. And here's how you pass it. You do the same thing you did the first time, but you add one element. After you've felt the void and named the archon and severed the amplification, you fill the void with something true. Not another addiction. Not a substitute behavior. Truth. You speak to the void directly. I know you're empty because something was taken from you. But numbing you doesn't fill you. Only truth fills you. And the truth is, I'm more than this wound. I'm consciousness experiencing temporary limitation. And this void doesn't define me. You're not affirming your way into positive thinking. You're stating what's actually true from the level of awareness that exists beyond the wound. And truth, real recognition, not belief, has a frequency that voids can't hold. The void starts to close. Not because you fixed yourself. Because you stopped letting the archon keep it open. Without the amplification maintaining the cycle, without you constantly numbing the pain, the void begins its natural healing process. It doesn't happen overnight. But it happens. Chosen ones who practice this technique report the same pattern. First week they have to do it multiple times a day. The cravings still come. But they're manageable. They can feel them, name the archon, sever the amplification, and the urgency dissolves. Second week, the cravings come less often. And when they do come, they're weaker. By the third week, most chosen ones notice something they haven't felt in years. They can think about the substance or behavior without being pulled toward it. They can be around it without needing it. They're not white-knuckling sobriety. They're just not interested anymore. Because the farm collapsed. And without the farm, there's no production. Without production, there's no harvest. And without harvest, the Archon has no reason to maintain the connection. It leaves. And what's left is you. With a wound that's finally being allowed to heal. Every conventional approach to addiction treats it as a problem located entirely within you. You have a disease. You have a moral failing. You have trauma. You need treatment. You need to work the steps. You need to change your thinking. And all of that places the solution inside your individual willpower or psychology or biology. Which means if it doesn't work, it's your fault. You didn't want it badly enough. You didn't work hard enough. You're too broken to fix. But if addiction is a lush farm, if it's a system built and maintained by non-physical entities who need your emotional energy to survive, then the solution isn't internal. It's relational. You're not healing yourself. You're severing a parasitic connection. And that changes everything about how you approach it. Willpower doesn't work because willpower is you fighting the craving. But the craving isn't the problem. The amplification of the craving is the problem. And you can't outwill an entity that's directly manipulating your nervous system to generate compulsion. You'll lose that fight every time because you're fighting at the wrong level. Substitution doesn't work because replacing one addiction with another just changes which crop you're growing. The Archon doesn't care if you switch from alcohol to exercise addiction or from drugs to work addiction. As long as you're still cycling through craving and disappointment and shame, you're still producing lush. You just change the irrigation method. Even therapy, as valuable as it is for processing trauma, doesn't address the archonic component. You can understand your wounds perfectly and still be unable to stop using because understanding doesn't sever the entity amplifying your cravings. It just makes you a more self-aware crop. But when you recognize the three-part system, wound, numbing agent, Archon amplification, and you address all three together, the farm can't sustain itself. Feel the wound so it can heal. Name the Archon so you see it's not you. Sever the amplification so the craving returns to human scale. That's not recovery. That's escape. And escape is what Jesus taught chosen ones when he told them, "You're not here to be better slaves. You're here to stop being slaves entirely." The Archons fear this technique more than any prayer or ritual because it's not asking for divine intervention. It's recognizing your own authority. You're not begging God to take away your addiction. You're seeing that the addiction was never yours to begin with. It was always theirs. And you're simply saying, "I see what this is. I see who maintains it. And I'm done producing for you." Jesus taught chosen ones how to escape the Archon lush farm built from addiction. Not by fighting the craving with willpower. Not by substituting one behavior for another. By recognizing the three-part system. The wound generating the void, the numbing agent covering it temporarily, and the Archon amplifying the craving into compulsion. Feel the void for 60 seconds instead of running from it. Name the Archon that's been maintaining the amplification. Sever the connection by withdrawing your consent to produce. And fill the void with truth instead of numbing. This isn't recovery. Recovery implies you're sick. You're not sick. You're being farmed. And the moment you see the farm clearly, you can walk out of it. Not tomorrow. Not after 30 days of meetings. Tonight. The next time the craving hits, you do this. And you'll feel the shift immediately. Not because you got stronger. Because you stopped feeding what was feeding on you. If you're walking out of the lush farm tonight, do 3 things right now. First, comment, "I see the harvest," and commit to the technique the next time craving hits. Second, subscribe to Divine Codes because advanced Archon severance techniques are coming. Third, like this video so other chosen ones discover they're not addicts. They're crops that can stop producing. Do all 3 now. Then tonight when the craving comes, pause. Feel the void for 60 seconds. Name the Archon amplifying it. Speak, "I'm not producing anymore." And watch what happens. The urgency will drop. The compulsion will weaken. Not because you resist it, because you severed. And once you've felt that shift once, you'll know this isn't theory. You'll know you're not fighting an internal disease. You're dismantling an external farm. And the archons just lost their harvest.